Hi. So this is going to be the first video that I post on the channel the new channel that I'm doing um which I don't really remember the name that I picked for it cuz I haven't looked at it in a while. I set up the channel and then I haven't posted to it yet cuz I was very close to having this little guy and his twin brother who is currently napping. He's not, but his brother is. Um so This first video I wanted to share is the story of a brief overview of my pregnancy and then the story of my twins' birth. So, because I see a lot of people post, stories like this, and so I guess this is technically considered a story time video. I don't know. I don't usually post too regularly, but I'm going to try and post a little more regularly. Um, who knows? Maybe if I get enough traffic, I can start getting paid, and then I can actually afford their medical bills since Medicaid screwed me out of the help that I desperately need. And I don't know what I'm going to do. But that's a different story. Um, so I found out around this time last year that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, which apparently affects one in 10 women. And with my situation, I hadn't had a period in 3 years at that point, and I could not. I was going to the gym every day and eating healthy, and you know, one sugary thing a week, mostly just water. That I drank. I drank milk and water. That was it. And it was fat-free milk. It wasn't even like whole milk or anything. Um, it's fat-free milk and water, and once in a blue moon, I'd have a little bit of tea or something, but that was like my treat. That was not my usual drink. And I was going to the gym religiously, and I was gaining weight like crazy. In that 3 years, I gained like 70 pounds. And at the time that I first got diagnosed with PCOS, I weighed 273 pounds and rising, and I could not get it down. So after they discovered I had PCOS, they put me on metformin because one of the things with PCOS is your body resists its own insulin, and it kind of causes you to cling to every calorie. And I also have sleep apnea, which causes me to cling to every calorie because my body goes into survival mode when I go to sleep because it thinks it's dying. And so it clings to every calorie and try and keep me alive. And so basically, no matter what I was doing, I was just going to keep gaining weight. And so it caused my periods to stop. And when they put me on metformin, I lost 16 pounds. In about a month and a half, I lost 16 pounds. And I. Oh, my other baby, I think, might be waking up. But will make this video quick. um, Sorry, I get so distracted. Okay, back to what I'm trying to say. All right, had a period in November. Husband and I tried to get pregnant. Found out December 2nd we were pregnant. Found out December 28th that we were having twins. The pregnancy was pretty smooth. I had a lot of physical pain because there's a lot of shifting that goes on in your bones and your muscles, and it's called relaxing. It doesn't relax. It hurts. If you've ever had a baby, you know it hurts. Round ligament pain is the devil. And, but I didn't have any morning sickness or anything, and the pregnancy went pretty well. I was able to work up until I was 31 weeks and 4 days. Um, yeah, 31 weeks and 4 days. I started out that morning in a lot of physical pain, but it kind of just seemed like it was normal pain. I had never been pregnant before, so I didn't really know what contractions felt like. But by the time I got back to work from my lunch break, which was about 12:15, I was having. I figured out shortly thereafter, talking to one of my friends who's had kids, that I was having contractions, and they were so bad that I was like gripping the chair and I couldn't, like, I just could not get up. So my job had me call the doctor. The doctor told me to go to the hospital, and they were able to stop my contractions, which were strong, and they were like 2 minutes apart. I hadn't dilated or anything yet, so they worked really hard to stop my contractions to keep me from dilating. And they did. And I went home, and then they told me just to keep the rest of the week off. Well, then that Friday, which was the day that I turned 32 weeks, I had a scheduled OB appointment, so I went to it, and I was having contractions the entire time. And they checked my cervix to see if it was dilating, and it wasn't, so they sent me home. And the contractions just kept on and kept on and kept on. So I went to the hospital that night, and I had dilated 1 centimeter, and I was at -2 station. So they sent me to from Rockingham Memorial in Harrisonburg, Virginia, to the University of Virginia Hospital, because they have a NICU, and they needed me to be over there in case I had the babies, because the babies would have needed the NICU. So after 4 days, everything stopped, and I hadn't dilated any further, so they let me go home, and they just had me on bed rest. And my OB told me, with how healthy the boys had been, and the fact that they had steroid shots, that as long as they made it to 34 weeks, they would have to stay at the regular hospital for about a week, but they wouldn't have to go to the NICU. So we thought 34 weeks was the magic number. So we get to July 5th, which is 34 weeks, still no babies. So I was quite thrilled. I had been literally getting babysat by family members up to that point. And so I told my husband, everything's fine. I'm at a point now where if I go into labor, it's no big deal. So I would really like to stay home by myself this coming week. And he said, okay. So I had an OB appointment on the 8th. And I went, and at that appointment, when they were doing my ultrasound, the babies were so squished together, that they actually thought that baby B, Jonathan, that's the one that's in the other room, they thought he was breech, when he and his brother were both vertex at the previous appointment, which had just been a week earlier. And so they laid my head down to the ground, and when gravity pulled his body straight, they found that he's actually still vertex. So I expressed concern about the fact that they were so crowded that they couldn't even get an accurate ultrasound without putting me in a weird position. And they were like, oh, no, you'll be fine. And at that point, the babies were estimated to be weighing 5'7" and 6'4". This little guy here being 5'7", and big guy in the other room being 6'4". So I went to the doctor part of the appointment, and this doctor, I won't say the doctor's name because people that know him may see this video, and I'm not trying to slander him by name, but and this isn't really slander because it's fact. It's not, you know what I mean. I'm sorry. And moving on. I'm so distracted. Doctor, I asked the doctor if he was concerned about the possibility of a prolapsed cord. A prolapsed cord is basically when a baby shifts and lays on their cord and it cuts off the oxygen supply, and it can be fatal if you don't get the baby out quickly. He was pretty much laughed at me and was just like, you're gonna be fine. And he's like, you only have 6 weeks left, you'll be fine. And I was like, 6 weeks, try 3 weeks and some odd days. And he's like, what do you mean? He said, you're only 34 weeks. Yeah, 34 weeks. And I was like, yeah, but I'm scheduled to deliver at 38. And he goes, well, I'm going to look into that and try to push you to 40. I think you should carry it to 40. Just to give you some math, these babies were growing at half a pound a week. So I would have had an 8-pound and a 10-pound baby if I carried to 40. I'm pretty sure my pelvis would have blown up. So I was very upset because I was really worried. I had a mom instinct gut feeling that something was not right. I was really upset that nobody was listening to me. My husband told me when I got home, because I was like in tears the whole night. I just kept, like, I'd be fine and then I would just cry because I just was so scared. And like their movement was starting to slow down, and I was trying to convince myself it was just because they were getting big. My husband said to call the doctor the next day. And so I was going to call the doctor the next day, but that nesting instinct hit me like a ton of bricks. And I just went and like redid the whole house and was just jamming out to music and having a grand old time. And I had a random burst of energy. I hadn't had energy in months. And that was when I noticed I hadn't felt any movement at all the entire day. And at this point, it was like 9 o'clock at night. So I did all the things that they tell you to do, lay on your side in a quiet room, drink ice water, eat something. And I started to get a little bit of movement, not tons, but a little bit of movement. So I was like, okay, they're moving. So I'm not going to go to the hospital right now. Um, because I'm probably being super dramatic. But I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and with everything that happened to these boys, nobody could convince me otherwise. Um, I prayed earnestly until probably about 3 o'clock in the morning, over and over and over, the exact same prayer. Lord, I feel like something is wrong. If and only if it is not safe for them to be in my belly, please let my water break. And I prayed that over and over and over again, and I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning about 9:20. Felt like I had to go to the bathroom, and as soon as I stood up, my water broke. So I was like, okay, well, it's obviously not safe for them to be in my belly. It doesn't necessarily mean they're in danger. It just means that they need to come, because that's what I was praying, and this is what happened. So I drove myself to the hospital. Um, a lot of people thought I was crazy, but I didn't feel like I had to push, and I wasn't really having contractions. But I knew my water had broke, and so I went to the hospital, and they checked me, and I was 3 centimeters dilated, and I was 80% effaced. Um, and we were sitting there, my family showed up, we're all giggling and talking, and just expressing how excited we were that the babies were coming, making phone calls, telling people I was in labor. And they came to put the monitors on my belly. And once they got the monitors on, the nurse's face just dropped. And I asked her, I giggled because these boys had a history of running off the monitors when I would get non-stress tests at UVA when I was going into preterm labor. And sorry, pacifier fell out. And I got this bad feeling in my gut. She said, "No, it's not that. Baby A's heart rate is really slow." And I said, "Okay." So they rolled me on my side, which hurt. And they just were like, his heart rate's not coming up. So I did an ultrasound. And they were like, okay, we're going to have radiology read this. And we're going to come back up and let you know if you have to have a C-section. It's like, okay. Well, shortly after that, same doctor that had made fun of me a couple days earlier happened to be the one that was on call. So he ended up having to be the one to deliver me. And he comes in like an elephant on parade, hollering at everybody that we got to get these babies out now, and everyone needs to get out, throw oxygen on her, get her prepped, da-da-da-da-da. Not calm at all, acting like there was a reason to be scared, which put me into a panic. So I'm hyperventilating. I'm like looking around frantically. My mom's asking if my dad can pray for me because my dad's a pastor and happens to be my pastor. And everyone's like, well, if you want the babies to not make it, then yeah, take the time to pray. So, everyone's like, okay, fine. So everybody's upset, everybody's scared, everybody's hollering. I have no idea what's going on. I'm worried to death for my kids, that I have been praying for years. And, they roll me into the OR, And I couldn't get myself onto the table because I was so heavy that if I was laying down, my brain could not get the signals to my legs to move. So they were yelling at me to get on the table, yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling and yelling, and telling me how if I don't move fast enough, it's going to be a problem. And, we've got to get ready, and slap the anesthesia on her. And just everyone was acting like we should be scared. So I was terrified. Well, next thing I know, I'm waking up. And they told me that the first thing to tell me was baby A, little baby A right here, was born with no heart rate and he was not breathing. So what had ended up happening was he prolapsed his cord. Shocker. That I would actually know what was going on with my child. Go figure. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know anything, right? He prolapsed his cord. He had only just passed when they got him out, so they were able to resuscitate him. His brother was born screaming, but his brother had a lot of fluid in his lungs. They were so focused on stabilizing little A here that Jonathan, baby B, ended up going into cardiac arrest, and he also coded. So they had to resuscitate him too. So these boys had to go to UVA and be in the NICU after all. And they had to be put into hypothermia. They had to be rewarmed. They started out on ventilators. They got extubated and put on CPAPs. Then they got put on regular nasal cannulas. And then they were on room air. And the thing is that all happened. Like, their lungs matured and everything got better. And their MRIs came back. Well, Lloyd's MRI, this is Lloyd. His MRI came back totally clear. And Jonathan's came back showing that he had 2 subdural hemorrhages, which means he was bleeding, but it wasn't actively bleeding. It was just kind of sitting there. So he had several MRIs subsequently that showed that the blood was being reabsorbed. So he's okay. But all that happened in about 2 weeks. For them to get better in 2 weeks was truly a miracle from God. They had to stay for 27 days total because they still had to learn how to eat. And that's what took the longest, was them learning how to eat. But I did not get to see them for 3 days. And when I did get to see them, Lloyd couldn't handle any stimulation, or he would stop breathing because he'd get scared. And when Jonathan arrived, Jonathan went by helicopter. And when he arrived, he was so scared and so upset and so panicked, they had to sedate him. He didn't calm down until his dad and brother got there. And it was really hard and it was really scary. And now I'm left with $170,000 in debt because Medicaid dragged their feet and screwed up my applications. Again, different story, but that's part of this story as well. So, yeah, I'm kind of going through it really fast. I'm not putting a lot of emotion into it, but that's because it's a really long story, and this video is already 18 minutes long. But that is how my experience with childbirth went, and it was not fun. It was emotional and scary. I am recovering from a mild case of PTSD from it. I had to throw away the outfit I was wearing that day because I would have an anxiety attack just looking at it. The other night I was watching Grey's Anatomy and a baby prolapsed his cord and had to be delivered by C-section, and like all this stuff was happening to that baby that is exactly what happened to my son. And I started shaking, and I told my husband to get my baby and bring him to me. I had to hold him because I was shaking and I was really upset. And I honestly think that if that doctor had listened to me and took me seriously on July 8th, I could have avoided my son prolapsing his cord. And I could have avoided all of that. That doctor is no longer allowed to have anything to do with me. He's not to do any of my appointments or do anything with my kids. I've already discussed that with the office. And then also, apparently, when they wheeled me away to the OR, the nurse turned to my family and said, God is not going to save these babies. We are. Let me tell you, if I had gotten that nurse's name, I'd have had her job. Because it does not matter what you believe, we're Christians. And if we were Muslim or if we were, Buddhist or anything like that, I guarantee you she wouldn't have turned around and said, Allah's not going to save the baby, or Buddha's not going to save the baby, or whatever, however Buddhists work. I'm not sure how that works. But they would not have done that. They only did that because we were Christians, and I know that's a fact. Because nurses and doctors have a God complex. And it's okay for everyone to say whatever they want to say to Christians. We're supposed to just take it and not get upset. Everyone else can get upset, and everyone's like, oh, I get why you're upset. Us, we're supposed to just take the abuse and just let people treat us like that. And I know that's what's expected of us, but I would have said something if I'd gotten her name. I did not get her name, unfortunately. But that was my experience with that. And I don't know if I'll ever want to have another kid or not, because I was that traumatized. But you know what? The end result was this beautiful little guy and his twin brother, who, like I said, is sleeping, so I couldn't get him. But this beautiful baby, and his brother were the result, and they are healthy, and we are home, and I get to go back to work in a couple weeks, and they get to come with me, and it's okay now. It's okay. It was a happy ending, but it was a scary story. Anyways, so if you've stayed with me this whole time, thank you for staying with me. I know that I'm only going to have the one video. I am going to try and post more videos. If you want to subscribe, go for it. If you don't, that's okay. Also, due to how sensitive of a topic this is and how vulnerable I'm being publicly, try to keep your comments kind and not rude. So, if you can't, then I'll disable comments for this video. Only because even though I'm doing it quickly, this is a sensitive topic for me. And I'm really doing this video mostly because the more I talk about it, the better I feel, and the more I'm going to heal. And I really need to heal. I need to be able to stop having panic attacks over any little thing that reminds me of the month of July, because it was pretty much the entire month of July that we were either in the NICU or in the hospital, or I was recovering from this surgery or that thing, and the boys having their trouble, and it was awful. If you want more stories about about my time, because I have like sub stories that go with all this. If you're interested in those kinds of things, I don't mind sharing them. But just comment and tell me if you want to hear about them. One of the stories is why I hollered at the doctors at the top of my lungs and made the nurses that were on the other side of the nurse station come in and ask if I was okay. And I'm not a yeller. That's one of those stories. So if you're curious about any of the stories, comment and I'll make videos. But hopefully you guys will enjoy seeing these little pumpkin heads grow up. So, bye.